Hello and good evening, everybody, and it's great to be back. I just want to say that straight up front, right off the beginning. And first of all, where have I been? Well, unfortunately, last week I was battling a flu, and I was in no condition to make a video, so I kind of took last weekend off. Please forgive me for that. I'm still not fully at 100%. I might be coughing a few times throughout this video, but I'm going to do my very best and give you the most quality content that I absolutely can in my ability, or within my ability. So, what are we going to do tonight? Well, we are not going to do an episode of Album Rant tonight. Instead, I'd like to do another episode of Face Off. Now, to those of you who may be new to this channel, or maybe those who just forgot, this is the way Face Off works. I choose two artists that have some kind of similarity, at least in my opinion. Maybe they have similar musical styles. Maybe they have similar discographies. Maybe they have similar origins. I don't know, but it's going to be the fifth episode of Face Off I think I've done, and the way it works is I take the first album by both artists, compare them, declare a winner, and give that artist a point. Then I compare the second album by both artists, compare them, and declare a winner, and give that artist a point. And by the end of all the available rounds, whoever has the most is the winner. So who have I chosen to focus on tonight? Well, I thought it'd be a very good idea to do a face-off episode focusing in on the careers and the albums of Whitesnake and Rainbow. Now, why did I choose those two artists? Well, to someone who may not be very well familiar with their origins, it might be a little bit confusing. But both of them have roots, have origins in the band Deep Purple. Now, I think I said this on a previous episode, from the years 1970 to maybe 1972, 1973, Deep Purple absolutely ruled the planet. They had hit after hit after hit. And it was mostly due to the Mark II lineup of Ian Gillan on lead vocals, Ritchie there's that cough. Ritchie Blackmore on lead guitar, Roger Glover on bass guitar, Ian Pace on the drums, and then John Lord on the keyboards. Well, after their 1973 album, Who Do We Think We Are?, Roger Glover and Ian Gillan left the band, and they were replaced by two guys by the name of David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. And they produced the album Burn, and I absolutely loved it. And then later that year, in 1974, they released their second album as together. It's their ninth total album, but second album by that lineup, entitled Stormbringer, as you can see right there. Well, this album was kind of a change of direction for the band. Sure, there were some hard rockers like Lady Double Dealer and the title track, but a lot of these songs really dove more into funk and soul and blues music. And that was mostly due to the influence of David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. Ritchie Blackmore, however, did not like the direction that this album took, and well, I kind of see his point. And so he left the band and he formed his own band called Rainbow. And they released their first album entitled Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow in 1975. Well, that very same year, Deep Purple put out an album, and it was entitled Come Taste the Band. And this was the only album in their discography that had neither Ian Gillan nor Ritchie Blackmore on it. Instead of Ritchie Blackmore, someone by the name of Tommy Bolin was on lead guitar. So the lineup on this one was David Coverdale, Tommy Bolin, Glenn Hughes, Ian Pace, and John Lord. Well, unfortunately, the tour for this album was a complete and total disaster, and so the band basically broke up, which is a shame because excuse me. I kind of thought it was a pretty decent album. Not their greatest, but I think there was some great stuff on it. But needless to say, unfortunately, Deep Purple was done in 1975. But David Coverdale went off and formed his own band, just like Ritchie Blackmore did. And he recruited some other guys by the names of Bernie Marsden, Mickey Moody, Neil Murray, Dave Duck Dowell, I want to say. And later, for their first official album, John Lord from Deep Purple actually did join the band, and Ian Pace would join a few years later, actually. And so basically, by this point, we have two different bands, Rainbow and Whitesnake, and both of them were formed by former Deep Purple members, and so therefore, that is the reason why I've chosen to focus on these artists. Now, a few things before I get started. Again, this is completely my subjective opinion. If you disagree with me, I fully welcome that discussion in the comments section. Just please make sure that you're respectful and no profanity or politics. We do not need personal attacks on this channel. Secondly, this is actually going to be a pretty short episode of Face Off, but Rainbow only had 7 albums, so in terms of Whitesnake, I can only go up to their 7th album. It's not like I pick and chose what Whitesnake albums I wanted to count and which ones I didn't. I just started from the beginning, and I worked my way up until we ran out of Rainbow albums, so that's my logic behind my reasoning, and that's my method to my madness. So we're going to go ahead and start with round number 1, the first album by both artists. We have 1975's Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow versus 1978's Trouble by Whitesnake. And I'm just going to come out and say this right now. I think both of these albums were a tad underwhelming. I know there are some people out there who probably are going to disagree with me on this, at least in some points, especially when it comes to Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. But I found both of these very, very flat. But I mean, it's not like there aren't some good songs. I mean, it kicks off, at least, let me back up. Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow kicks off with Man on the Silver Mountain, which is an absolute classic, and in college, I absolutely loved that song. Unfortunately, after that opening track, there's not much I can really write home about. Self-Portrait is slow and dreary, and it just never really hooks me in. Neither does Black Sheep of the Family. It's too generic in my opinion. Catch the Rainbow is a ballad, and honestly, when I picked this up, I did not really want to hear a ballad. I wanted to hear some hard, medieval, mystical, magical metal, and it just didn't give it to me. Snake Charmer's pretty disposable. I really do not like the Temple of the King. If you don't like rock and roll, I believe it's a cover, but yeah, it sounds more like 50s boogie music. 16th Century Greensleeves actually is pretty solid, but I think I mentioned this on a previous episode. The live version is much better. And then we have Still I'm Sad, which is a Yardbirds cover. And I think I also mentioned this on that very same episode, actually. The live version is much better. And for some reason, I do not understand why. It's an instrumental on the studio album, but it has lyrics on the live album. I don't understand it. I don't think I ever will, but needless to say, the live version is a lot better. This is a pretty disposable instrumental. On the other hand, yeah, Trouble does not do too much better, and it's really a shame because there is some talent on this album. I mean, David Coverdale is amazing. John Lord is one of the greatest keyboardists ever. Neil Murray is a very competent bassist. I mean, of course, we have the dual guitar attack of Bernie Marsden and Mickey Moody. And what can I say? This thing is produced by Martin Birch, mostly well known for his work with Black Sabbath and Deep Purple. Man, that's quite a resume. But yeah, these songs are just very, very flat. We have Take Me With You pretty fast. I mean, I dig it and everything, but again, there's not much punch to it. Love to Keep You Warm is a song I never really quite gravitated to at first, but you know, I think I'm starting to warm up to it, no pun intended, but I mean, it's a decent song, but again, the production could have been better. Lie Down, A Modern Love Story, it's pretty fast, but it's also pretty silly. Then we have Day Tripper, or a cover of Day Tripper. I don't think it really needed to be on here. Nighthawk, Vampire Blues. It's got a pretty funky rhythm to it, which I appreciate and everything. But then on the second half, we have The Time Is Right for Love. I don't really care for that one. It sounds more like soul music, which, again, is leftover influences from Deep Purple, because that was the direction they were going down before they broke up, but I still don't really care for it. And, yeah. The title track is okay. It's kind of slow, but it's alright. Belgium Tom's Hat Trick is an instrumental. It's okay. I mean, it's got some great keyboards, by the way, from John Lord. He is an absolute master. I'm going to say that right now. But, I mean, it's good, but not that good. Free Flight. David Coverdale doesn't sing this one. He lets Bernie Marsden sing it. And unfortunately, he's not quite as good of a lead vocalist. I'm not quite sure what the thought process was behind that, but I mean, it's not awful. It's not terrible, but it's also not very memorable. Don't Mess With Me, though, I think is a good album closer. It's got a nice rhythm. It's pretty fast, pretty aggressive, and I think it does close things out very well. But, I mean, it's really this is what it all comes down to. Do I like an album that has a few good songs and a lot of meh? Or do I like an album that's pretty mediocre from start to finish? Well, I'm sorry, everybody. I know a lot of people will probably not agree with this decision, but I like Trouble better. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that. Whitesnake is going to win this round. So let's bring over our leaderboard right here. We now have 1 round for Whitesnake and no rounds for Rainbow. But let's see what happens in the second round. We have the second album from both artists. We have, by Rainbow, 1976's Rainbow Rising versus, from Whitesnake, 1979's Lovehunter. Whoa. Whoever created this artwork, they sure did not believe in subtlety, I'll tell you that. Yeah. But before I even get started, Rainbow Rising is going to win, and it's not even close. Rainbow Rising is one of the greatest albums ever. From start to finish, this thing is an absolute beast. This thing is pure, classic, neoclassical, medieval, mystical, magical metal. I can't believe I just said that, but I did. I love this album from the first time I saw it. Ritchie Blackmore fired everybody from that first album, except for lead vocalist Ronnie James Dio, who did make quite a name for himself later, and maybe I'll talk about that on another episode, but not quite tonight. But we have Cozy Powell also on the drums. Wow. Blackmore, Dio, and Powell. That is one great combination. The other two guys, who do we have right here? I kind of forget what the lineup was on this. We have Tony Carey on the keyboards. Very serviceable. And we have Jimmy Bain on the bass. and he would later go to play on Dio's solo career, and I really, really respect that. Terror Woman, man, what an opener. Kicks it off so well. A very moody keyboard intro, but then it starts cranking in, and boy, you just feel the mood on this. This thing is pure fantasy, and it's absolutely amazing. It's got a crunching guitar from Ritchie Blackmore. Ronnie, he sounds amazing on this. One of the greatest lead vocalists ever. I love Terror Woman ever since from the moment I saw it. Run with the Wolf is pretty fast. One of the weaker songs on here, but it follows things up very nicely. Then we have Starstruck. Apparently about a female fan who was, well, starstruck. And yeah, the sound on this is just amazing. We have a cover of Do You Close Your Eyes? It's only about 2 minutes and 58 seconds, but I like it and everything, but it's definitely the weakest song on here. But guys, side 2 of this thing is perfection. We have Stargazer. Kicks in with the drums. Nice drum intro by Cozy Pal. And then the mood of this thing is just phenomenal. The orchestration works. The keyboards work. The guitar works. The vocals work. Man, do the vocals work. This thing is an epic. It tells the story about it's very biblical. Let me back up. It tells the story of this wizard who has employed Jewish slavery to build him a tower because he thinks he can fly. But when he climbs to the top of the tower, instead of flying, he falls. And time stands still, yet there's blood on the sand. Man, the poetry in this is just phenomenal. It works. Everything about it is incredible. This is pure epic metal. And if you have not heard it, you need to. Then A Light in the Black is a lot faster, and it's a follow-up to Stargazer, but it works just as well. It's got a very fast rhythm, and again, even the interlude works. It's got a nice keyboard interlude, and everything just clicks. This album clicks. This album is better than Lovehunter. That doesn't mean there aren't some decent things on Lovehunter. It starts off with Long Way From Home, and again, it feels more like gospel music or soul music, which isn't quite my thing, but it's good enough and everything. Walking in the Shadow of the Blues is a good song. It's very upbeat and it's very fast, and John Lord's keyboards are really, really accompanying the song very well, and I do respect that. Help Me Through the Day is kind of melodic, doesn't quite hit the mark. Medicine Man, I do not like Medicine Man, but the title track is pretty decent, and it's even better live. Once again, he gives lead vocals to Bernie Marsden on Outlaw, and I kind of don't really feel that should have been something that should have happened. And Rock and Roll Woman is your pretty typical boogie rocker. But again, this thing ends with We Wish You Well, which is a piano ballad. And it's only 1 minute 36 seconds. And, it's pretty decent. And this would become the band's signature song later. They always close with that. And I respect that, but at the same time, Rainbow Rising is far better. Lovehunter never stood a chance. Rainbow is going to win this album. So we now have a tie. 1 round for Whitesnake and 1 round for Rainbow. So let's see what round 3 is going to bring us. We have 1978's Long Live Rock and Roll versus 1980's Ready and Willing. And I gotta say, Whitesnake really picked it up on this one. Dave Dowell was out after Lovehunter, and former Deep Purple drummer, and actually the only member who was on every Deep Purple album, Ian Pace, joined the band. And I would consider this Whitesnake's classic lineup. And I mean, let's just go ahead and look right here. We have Fool for Your Lovin', which is very swinging and very, very rhythmic. I really do love Fool for Your Lovin'. They would later remake this one on an album in the late 80s and make it more of a pop metal song. No, the blues version is better. I really like that one. Sweet Talker is pretty fast, and it's definitely very sexual in nature, but I kind of dig it. The title track is good. It's got a very nice bluesy feel to it, and I definitely like that. Blind Man starts out, again, very, very slow, and it does kind of build up towards the end. And, you know, it's okay. But definitely the highlight for Ready and Willing is going to be Ain't Gonna Cry No More. Starts out very acoustically driven, and again, it's definitely still got those Deep Purple influences on it. It, again, feels like soul music, but when this thing starts picking up, it's about halfway through, it's very swinging, and I really, really dig it, okay? The rest of the album is pretty hit and miss, but I think She's a Woman is a pretty decent closer. So, having said that, I do give my endorsement to Ready and Willing. Unfortunately, for Whitesnake, it doesn't stand a chance against Long Live Rock and Roll. Wow. If you thought Rainbow Rising was great, Long Live Rock and Roll is great also. Again, kicks off with the title track. Probably the most straightforward song on here, but, you know, what's it about? Rock and roll and how we want it to long live. Hence the name. And, yeah, it's a very good intro. And, again, it's still got that very, very classical, medieval, mystical sound that Rainbow Rising had, and I absolutely love it. Lady of the Lake kind of returns more to the sound that we knew more on Rainbow Rising. Again, it's more fantasy-based, and I really, really enjoy it. Great rhythm, love it. LA Connection is a lot more like the title track of Lady of the Lake. It's a little bit slower. It's got a kind of a brooding feel to it, but, you know, it works all the same. And I don't know if this is true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But Ronnie James Dio, I think, is from LA originally. Is he the LA Connection? Maybe. Back when I was running cross country, that thought just popped into my head during a workout where I was definitely, my mind was racing because, you know, I was running, and you don't really think clearly when you're running, but maybe I did make a rational thought there. Who knows? But the best song off of Long Live Rock and Roll is definitely Gates of Babylon. And I actually think this may be my favorite Rainbow track ever. Again, this has a Middle Eastern feel to it. You feel like you're in the middle of the Arabian Nights, but man, everything is just clicking. I love the rhythm, and Ronnie, man, talented vocalist. I love him as a vocalist, and I wish he stayed with the band longer. But yeah, Gates of Babylon is absolutely killer, and again, it definitely feels biblical, which I love. Then we have Kill the King, which is probably the most well-known song from this album, and I also really like it. It's a little bit more straightforward, but that doesn't make it bad or anything. But yeah, I mean, it's fast, it's aggressive, it's mystical, I still love it. The Shed is more brooding, but man, it's got a punch to it. Sensitive Delight is a lot more fast, and it's one of the more straightforward songs on here, and much like the title track, I don't think it's quite as good as the title track, but it's still pretty good. Then Rainbow Eyes is unfortunately not the best closer. It's another ballad, another medieval ballad, much like Catch the Rainbow, but, you know, it's pretty serviceable. But having said all that, yeah, Long Live Rock and Roll is going to easily defeat Ready and Willing. Another round for Rainbow. So, let's go ahead and look at our leaderboard right there. And we have 1 round for Whitesnake and 2 rounds for Rainbow. Now, unfortunately for a lot of people, well, maybe not, because Ronnie James Dio did join Black Sabbath after this. But unfortunately for Rainbow and tonight's episode, that was the last Rainbow album with Ronnie James Dio. He was replaced by Graham Bonnet for Down to Earth, which was released in 1979. And it is going to go up against Whitesnake's 1981 album, Come and Get It. And this was a definite style change for Rainbow. Apparently this is what Ritchie Blackmore wanted to do, and Ronnie just could not get behind it, so he left, but fortunately was recruited by Black Sabbath. But I mean, Cozy Powell is still on this, and actually former Deep Purple bassist Roger Glover joined the band on this one, and that is a welcome addition. All Night Long is, it's a pretty good opener. It's that opening guitar riff I actually really do like, and I think the rhythm's good enough, and I think it's a pretty decent opener for what it's worth. Having said that, Eyes of the World is amazing. This feels like something that should have been on one of the previous two albums. It's dark, but it's also mystical, and it's just absolutely incredible. It feels like a leftover from the Ronnie James Dio years, and I love every second of it. But you know what would have made it better? If Ronnie James Dio had been singing it! No Time to Lose is a pretty fast rocker, pretty good. Making Love, it's very slow and very melodic, not my favorite, but yeah, unfortunately, the weak point from this album is going to be the album's big hit single or lead single. Since You've Been Gone, it definitely sounds like pop rock, and I can't really defend it. Love's No Friend is another pretty slow one, but, it's decent enough. Danger Zone picks things right back up. It's fast, but aside from Eyes of the World, the highlight of this album and side 2 is going to be Lost in Hollywood. This is definitely Cozy Powell's album. He definitely takes the lead on this one, and Lost in Hollywood is a great closer. Again, it's got another very, very thunderous opening by Cozy Powell on the drums, much like Stargazer. And it kind of reminds me again of the Ronnie James Dio years. Not as good, but still, I really like it. Come and Get It, on the other hand, much like some of the previous albums, it sounds pretty flat. And again, this is now their 4th album. I mean, 5th if you count their Snakebite EP, which I didn't. But, yeah, it's very disappointing because David Coverdale, Ian Pace, John Lord, and Martin Birch are all associated with this. But, I mean, it does have some highlights. Don't Break My Heart Again is a pretty good blues rocker, okay? Child of Babylon is pretty decent. Would I Lie to You is actually pretty hilarious if you actually listen to the lyrics. But, I mean, it's pretty good. Hit and Run's got a nice little rhythm to it, but definitely the highlight is Till the Day I Die. It starts out, and again, it's more of a ballad at the beginning. Very, very acoustically driven. But when the band really starts kicking in, it's got a nice swinging rhythm to it. And I really do give my endorsement to Till the Day I Die. But putting all that aside and being completely honest, the sound is better on Down to Earth. And Down to Earth does have the better music. So Rainbow is again going to win this round, and we now have 3 rounds for Rainbow and 1 round for Whitesnake. So, round number 5 we're now on. We are now going to go to the 5th album by both artists. We have, what is this? This is 1981's Difficult to Cure by Rainbow versus 1982's Saints and Sinners by Whitesnake. And guys, Rainbow was on a roll. It seemed like nothing could stop them, and unfortunately, this is the moment where I really started to say to myself, this is too much. I can't endorse this album. It went way too far down the pop rock direction, and it really sounds like a bad Foreigner knockoff. Don't get me wrong, I love Foreigner, but there is only one Foreigner, and if the songwriting was good, I could excuse all that. I could excuse the pop rock production, but it isn't. I Surrender, it's not good. No Release is awful, okay? I don't like Freedom Fighter. I don't like Midtown Tunnel Vision, even though that may be the best one on there. But really, guys, the title track, which is a remake or a reimagining of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, I don't like it. I hate it when bands do this. I hate it when metal artists do this. They take a classical piece of music and they start playing it like, they just start playing it and they put a heavy metal spin on it. It's not good. It's really kind of a worn out cliche. In concert, artists do this all the time with the Star Spangled Banner. I'm just like, stop. It doesn't sound good. Ugh. This is probably one of my least favorite Rainbow albums. Saints and Sinners, however, is a huge improvement from some of the previous albums. This one is a lot more hard rocking, and I think they finally found a decent sound for the band. Young Blood, man, this thing comes out rocking. Still has those blues influences behind it, which are definitely apparent, but man, Young Blood, very fast, and it's got more of a punch to it, which I definitely like. I also love Rough and Ready, also pretty fast. Bloody Luxury is a very, very silly song, but again, the bass sounds amazing on this, and it's unfortunate it didn't on previous albums. Victim of Love is probably the song most people remember from this one, and it's a lot more bluesy, but I still really like it. Now, tracks 5 and 6, Crying in the Rain and Here I Go Again. You may recognize those as heavy metal tracks. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Believe me, I will. But they weren't intended to be heavy metal tracks. They were intended to be blues rocks tracks. And this is where they originated. These are not the most well-known versions of these songs. They were remade about 5 years later, and I'll talk about in a second. And Here I Go Again is one of the most famous songs of all time, and it's definitely the song people remember the most about Whitesnake. But the original version, I doubt many people have heard. This is not heavy metal, it's blues rock, and it sounds a lot different. And I don't think it's the better version, but you know, it exists. Then we have Love and Affection, Rock and Roll Angels, Dancing Girls are all pretty decent. But the title track, I think, closes things out very, very nicely. The rhythm is great, the sound is great, and you've probably figured this out by this point, but I'm giving this round to Saints and Sinners. I really, really do not like Difficult to Cure, but that's really another story. So let's bring our leaderboard back up. We have 3 rounds for Rainbow, and now 2 rounds for Whitesnake. So let's press on to round number 6. We have 1983's Straight Between the Eyes by Rainbow versus 1984's Slide It In by Whitesnake. And yeah, again, these guys do not believe in subtlety. I'll give them that at least. Straight Between the Eyes, folks, is a huge improvement, in my opinion, over Difficult to Cure. I did not like Difficult to Cure, but I do really respect this one. Mostly because the songwriting is much better. I like Death Alley Driver. I like Stone Cold. Bring On the Night, while it may not have a lot of guitar on it, it's got a pretty good punch to it. Tight Squeeze is pretty hilarious, but I mean, it's slower, but it's also, like I said, very, very funny, and I like it. Tearing Out My Heart's alright. Power is probably my favorite song from here. It's a pretty straightforward rocker, and while it's nothing to write home about, it is pretty catchy. Mistreated, it's a little bit slower, and it's definitely a reference to the song Mistreated by Deep Purple, which, now that I think about it, both Ritchie Blackmore and David Coverdale performed on. It was off the Burn album. But yeah, it's not quite as good as Mistreated. Rock Fever is a little disposable. Eyes of Fire got a great rhythm to it, but you know, it's a little bit weak. But moving over here to Slide It In, and this thing is an absolute classic. This is the UK version, by the way. It has a slightly different order to it, but Gambler, not the best song on here, but it's serviceable. The title track, as silly and ridiculous as it is, I absolutely love it. The fact that it's so over-the-top sleazy is just what gives it its edge. I love it. Standing in the Shadow is pretty fast, and I definitely respect it. Give Me More Time is great. I think it's a radio track. I think I've heard it on the radio before. I may have, but it's awesome. It's pretty straightforward, but I still love it. Love Ain't No Stranger is probably the song most people remember from this one. It's not my favorite, but I have grown to appreciate it. But Slow and Easy, man. Still having those blues influences, and it's got a lot of sexual tension in it, but it starts out, it's definitely very soft, and it's got a very slick blues feel to it. But once it starts kicking in, and the whole band is just going dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, 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 it's incredible. And it's got a nice chorus that you can clap to. I've seen these guys twice. They played Slow and Easy both times, and man, I had my hands above my head. I was clapping to it. I loved it. Then we have Spit It Out. Spit It Out. I'll give you 3 guesses what it's about. It's okay, but it's not great. All or Nothing is decent. I like it. Hungry for Love. I can't believe not a lot of people have pointed this out, but it sounds a lot like If You Don't Like Rock and Roll by, It's Only Rock and Roll by the Rolling Stones. The rhythm sounds a lot like it. It's just something that I've noticed. Not a lot of people say that, but I like it. And I like It's Only Rock and Roll by the Rolling Stones, and I like Hungry for Love by Whitesnake. Guilty of Love sounds a little bit too pop rock for me, but I still respect it and everything. But having said that, I think both of these albums are better than what came before it. I like both of them. Well, actually, let me back up. I like Straight Between the Eyes. I love Slide It In, despite a few flaws. Whitesnake wins. This is one of the greatest metal albums out there, and Straight Between the Eyes just cannot compete with it. So we now have a tie. We have 3 rounds for Whitesnake and 3 rounds for Rainbow. And so it all comes down to this. The very final round. We have 1987's self-titled album by Whitesnake versus 1984's Bent Out of Shape by Rainbow. And Rainbow is still continuing down the whole Foreigner ripoff thing they were going for. And unfortunately, this is not as good as Straight Between the Eyes, but it still has its moments. Stranded's a pretty good opener. I do like Can't Let You Go. It's another, I wouldn't quite call it a ballad, but man, you just feel the guy's pain when he's singing this. It just really hits the mark. But definitely the best song on here is Street of Dreams, the 7th track. Believe it or not, this does hold a special place in my heart. The day that I was off the cross-country team in college, and by the way, I really wanted to be off that team, I get in my car and I decide to go out for breakfast, and that is the song, that is the track that is in my CD player on my radio, and so I'll always associate Street of Dreams with that moment, and it does bring back some happy memories for me. Make Your Move is another highlight from Been Out of Shape. Yeah, nothing to write home about, but you could definitely do worse. It's a good closer. Having said all that, it's no match for the self-titled album by Whitesnake. I love this thing. Let's look over here. All of their greatest hits, or most of their greatest hits, are on here. This is definitely Whitesnake at their very best. I talked about this earlier. Crying in the Rain is the leadoff track off the self-titled album. It has been reimagined. It's been reworked. It is now a heavy metal song, and it's so incredible, okay? It kicks off, and the guitar comes in, and David Coverdale is just giving it all he got, all he has. Let me back up and say that. He's like a black cat moans when he's burning with a fever. A stray dog howls when he's lonely in the night. A woman go crazy with the thoughts of retribution. But a man starts weeping when he's sick and tired of life. I love Crying in the Rain. They played this the first time I saw them, and what I just sang to you, probably not very well, by the way, but David Coverdale would sing a line, and he'd have the audience sing a line, and yeah, I'm proud to say I'm the only person around me who knew the lyrics. But yeah, it's still got that blues rhythm to it, but it's heavy metal now, and it sounds amazing. Then we have Bad Boys. Very fast, but this thing is snarling. This thing is rocking, and I love it. This is what they kick off both times I saw them, this is what they kicked off their show with, and it's amazing. Still the Night. Wow. Still, no pun intended, definitely has those blues influences. You can definitely hear it, but again, it's heavy metal, and it is absolutely incredible. They ended both the shows with this one, and I was staying till the very, very end. It's incredible. You need to hear it. Then, of course, we have Here I Go Again, which is the remake, and this is the version that most people are familiar with, and this is definitely the one that comes on the radio the most, and, you know, it's very iconic. It's very, very popular, and It's great. It's better than the original version, and I definitely respect it for that. Maybe it's a tad overplayed, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a great song. And actually, when I first heard it the very first time, when I bought my very first Whitesnake CD, I was like, okay, this sounds pretty good. We had that little keyboard intro, and I'm like, well, you know, it sounds more like a pop song. But then when it starts kicking in and we start hearing, you know, the main chorus and everything, I'm like, oh, yep, I know this. And yeah, from there on, it's just history. Now, unfortunately, this album is very, very front-loaded. The first side is incredible. The second side is good. I would even say it's great. I wouldn't quite call it incredible. But Give Me All Your Love, I really do love, no pun intended. Is This Love is the obligatory power ballad from here. It's not really my cup of tea. Children of the Night, decent. Straight for the Heart, same thing there. And Don't Turn Away. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but at the same time, they don't really make an impression like the first side does. But having said all that, the self-titled album by Whitesnake, their 7th total album, easily defeats Been Out of Shape, and Whitesnake is going to win this round, and Whitesnake is going to win the tournament. So the very final results, we have 4 rounds for Whitesnake and 3 rounds for Rainbow. Both are 2 of my favorite artists ever, but even putting all that aside, I have definitely still got to give the edge to Whitesnake, and it's a shame they didn't start off stronger than they should have, but they came full circle, and that's really all that matters. So I want to say thank you all very much for joining me tonight. I had a lot of fun with this tournament. On a side note, for the very first time on this channel, the cover art for the video, it is going to be something that I created. Now, I tried to find a good image that was representative of this topic on Google Image. I could not find anything, so I did a lot of cutting and pasting and rearranging, and I made my own little title picture. If you don't like it, again, I'm not a professional artist like whoever drew these album covers is, but I did my very best, so if you don't like it, please don't be true. Please don't be Please don't be too brutal, and I would really, really appreciate that. Anyways, that concludes tonight's episode. Next time, we're going to look at something that's a lot more recent. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.